Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Good Boxing Podcast with your host, Josh Saez. And I want to talk about Tyron Woodley and Jake Paul. Also, RIP, in my opinion, to George Kambosos versus Teofimo Lopez. And I'm just going to jump into these episodes and these topics right now. First things first, Jake Paul versus Tyron Woodley. You guys have seen the footage. Jake Paul, Tyron Woodley finally face to face. The official presser is kicked off, and the fight is going to take place in late August in Cleveland. Now, immediately you see a tremendous size difference. Jake Paul is substantially taller than Tyron Woodley, so you already know that reach advantage is going to go to Jake Paul. Now, Tyron Woodley's been training with Mayweather's camp. He's been training with Pedro Diaz, and you see him going around getting some good trainers for this fight. And I am very excited to see Tyron get in the ring with Jake Paul. A lot of people feel like Tyron Woodley has all of the tools and the kit to beat and solve the problem child that is Jake Paul. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. Who do you think I think is going to win? Right? That's the question. Who do you guys think I think is going to win? And I'm just going to come out and say it flatly. Tyron Woodley is not going to beat Jake Paul. Is it going to be a much more competitive fight? And do I think Tyron Woodley can provide some answers for our questions of Jake Paul? I do. I think Tyron Woodley does have very good hands, but you guys got to remember again, he's still an MMA fighter. Jake Paul has tremendous experience in the ring at this point in comparison to Tyron Woodley. Yes, he's been in the octagon, but in terms of pure boxing and practicing the sweet science, which is a different sport in general, I'm not going to generalize which is better. I'm not going to get into that argument. But when you worry about takedowns, when you worry about elbows, when you worry about getting clinched or submissions and pushed against the cage, held down, ground and pound, it's a lot more easy, in my opinion, to let your hands go in your hands if you have pretty good MMA hands, plus all of the other things I mentioned, the takedowns, the elbows, etc. The hands become a lot less on the radar of your opponent. They have to worry about all these other things and you get tagged. I mean, look at Khabib and Conor. You guys remember Khabib trying to take Conor down. Conor was so worried about Khabib's wrestling that he got dropped and caught with the shot by Khabib. Boxing's different. Woodley, I just don't know if he has the rhythm. I don't know if he has the head movement. And Jake Paul right now is on another level in terms of confidence. The kid works hard. He has a pretty good jab. He has a really, really good, solid overhand right. And if Tyron Woodley, in my opinion, is trying to use the shoulder roll, and that's based off being with Mayweather and Gerald Tucker, like these guys, I really do respect them. But in my opinion, I think Showtime is invested in Jake Paul, and this is the perfect fight for Jake Paul to catapult himself, in my opinion, to another stratosphere. If you are on Showtime pay per view versus Tyron Woodley, who's a big UFC star at the time, he's been at the top level and is known for his knockout power, that MMA crossover is going to be crazy because MMA is trying to rectify the two losses that happened. I'm sorry, the one big loss with Ben Askren when he fought Jake Paul. Everyone was like, "Oh, Ben Askren, he's a better he's a real fighter now." Now you're fighting a real striker from the UFC, so it should be really, really interesting to see what happens. But in my opinion, this is what's going to happen. You got Jake Paul who's going to move around. He's going to do what he does. He's going to throw that overhand right. Woodley, yes, has experience in the octagon, but if he's trying the shoulder roll, if he's picking his hands up, two things are going to happen. If he tries a shoulder roll, that overhand right with the body jab combination is going to land. You saw what Mosley did to Mayweather. And I'm not going to sit here and say that Jake Paul is Mayweather. I mean, Mosley. What I'm going to say, though, is when you're inexperienced, you're going to try the shoulder roll. It's going to loop right over the top. If he decides to pick his hands up, he's going to be open for a body shot. And then the hand's going to come down, and Jake Paul's going to throw the overhand right. If he goes to Tyron's body, I could see the hands going down, and I could see Tyron never really finding Jake Paul. But this could also happen. Tyron comes out strong, really, really aggressive, comes forward, and throws a lot of punches. Jake Paul is going to move around. It's going to seem like it's a much closer fight. But I think at the end of the day, Jake Paul is going to get the job done. And Jake Paul still needs to fight a boxer in order for people to get their retribution, in my opinion. Right? I'm a podcaster. I've been wrong. Whatever. It's my opinion. But this is based off what I see in the matchup. I'm just going to give you my honest take on what could happen. Now, can Tyron possibly win? Yeah. I mean, that would be, I don't know. I think to me, if Tyron beats Jake Paul, the rematch would be fantastic for Showtime, right? Whether Jake Paul loses or wins, they're going to sell. And if they do it again, Jake Paul can have a retribution story and maybe beat Tyron the second time. And then you have 3-4 matchups after that for Jake Paul. And now he's a mega pay-per-view star on Showtime, right? You're talking about Showtime, CBS. You're talking about one of the biggest media companies in the world, right? So this is fantastic, in my opinion, for boxing. Now, to move on, talking about boxing and media companies. You guys know the story between Triller, Teofimo Lopez, and George Kambosos. Now, when I say this fight, in my opinion, is over, RIP, let's say a prayer for Teofimo Lopez versus George Kambosos, because one, they're no longer going to fight September 11th or that weekend in New York City. George Kambosos clearly is pissed off, and I understand his take. He's been away from his family, his wife, his kid. No amount of money is worth ruining your life, in my opinion. Family, all these other things are more important. But I understand if you have to provide for your family, you take some time off, you'll come back. I understand that. But since the various postponements of the fight, Kambosos hasn't been home. He's been away for his family from a long time. And at this point, I think George Kambosos, after Teo had COVID and it got postponed again, and he felt like Teofimo was lying and they're not being honest, and you heard things about and rumors about the tickets not selling well in Miami. Now George Kambosos wants to move the fight to October and wants to go to Australia. And Teo's like, nah, man, fuck that. I'm not doing that. And I get Teofimo Lopez tested positive for the virus, but at this point, Teo's the A side and has all the belts. Kambosos, you don't have a single belt. You don't have the name notoriety. You don't have anything. So for you to think that you're only going to fight in Australia, or Triller is going to make Teo go to Australia to sell out because George is big in Australia, you're fucking crazy. And I hate saying that to you because I'm just going to be unfiltered. No one's watching the fight for you, Kambosos. Like, the last time you fought was against Lee Selby, and no one knew who you were. No one really knew who you were, only hardcore boxing fans, until you were latched to Teo and this big event for Undisputed, etc. So the rumors are that Teo just saying, fuck it, I'll just vacate the belt and the IBF. All right, so be it. No problem. I don't care. Like, just, I'll lose the belt. And he's right, because at this point, the IBF belt, Undisputed, they know who the Undisputed champion is. And this is why people don't want to become Undisputed, because you have to have all of these mandatories that you don't really need or want to do. That's why there's the Super Championship for the WBA and the Franchise Championship, because the last thing you want an Undisputed champion to do is lose his belt or vacate his belt because some mandatory is like, no, you got to fight me. So at this point, fuck it. Vacate the belt. You don't have to fight Kambosos in Australia. You don't have to pay the sanctioning fee of the IBF. Everyone knows what the real deal is. Let Kambosos fight some scrub or whatever for the IBF vacant belt. Fight Loma, right? Get the rematch. Shut that shit down. See who wins. It's a bigger fight, in my opinion, right? Especially if it goes to pay-per-view and you get that rev split or whatever it is. You may make the same amount of money if it does a really, really good job of selling. And to be honest, you don't need Kambosos, man. Just move on. And I think at this point, Teo's has his kid coming in October. The last thing he's gonna want to do is take 2 weeks, spend it in quarantine, do all of these things and be away from his child. Like, come on. It's just not going to happen, man. And RIP. Fight Lomachenko, do your thing. And I think this is it for the fight, in my opinion. And maybe they fight down the line because truthfully, all Teo has to do is fight Kambosos if he wants that big bag from Triller, because it doesn't say, hey, you got to fight this date. No one says you can't fight Lomachenko. So those are my thoughts. RIP. I'm going to sit here and say that fight is done. A done deal if Kambosos thinks he's going to Australia. So that's the episode for today. Let me know what you guys think. Are you excited for Jake Paul versus Tyron Woodley? I am. I think Jake Paul's going to win. Who do you think is going to win? And also, do you think the fight with Kambosos is off? Because I do. I don't think Teo should go to Australia. And I like Teo. He's annoying for catching COVID, if that's true. If he's lying about it, that's annoying. But regardless, Kambosos, you have no leverage. I don't get it. Well, be well, have a very good day, and hit that like button, subscribe, and you guys already know the deal. Be well and be good.